We don't.
one of the
I
only food
think
tech
it
investors
just
in
comes through.
India, and they're big into
Oh,
alternative
hi.
protein,
Good to see you.
French food ventures.
Hi, everyone, and
Yeah, you want
thank
to
you
talk?
for
Yeah.
joining us at the last day of the ninth annual Startup Boston Week. It's kind of crazy how fast the week has gone. The mission of this conference is simple: to bring together the entire startup community across every industry, department, and funding stage. Startup Boston exists to connect, educate, and celebrate this ecosystem, while serving as a trusted, unbiased guide to the best resources that can help you and your startup scale, or your team. My name is Linda Brown, and I'll be your host today. I'm a serial startup junkie, and I love the energy of this event. So I want to give a huge thank you to Suffolk University for giving us this space. I'm from Rhode Island. We don't have anything like this. Everything is spread out, and it's much harder to just kind of get into the groove of this. So I really love that we have this space here in Boston. If you're interested in exploring any Suffolk University entrepreneurship program opportunities, they are on the fifth floor. And with that, I will turn things over to Connor for our session. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much to Startup Boston Week for hosting this and for putting together this awesome panel. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves in just a moment, but I think food is so important. And typically when you think about tech, you think about AI or software, and you don't think about what goes into what we eat. And there's so much technology, and it's really exciting. So before I hand it over, I just want to take a quick poll. How many founders do we have in the audience? Fantastic. How many of you are food founders? Okay. How many investors? Okay, just the one. How many operators in the food space? Okay.
Yes.
Any researchers, scientists? One. Students? Awesome. I'm not sure if there's any other categories, but now that we know who you all are, let's meet our wonderful panelists, just starting at this end and going down.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me. My name is Oliver Sanchez. I'm CEO of ExtraSense. ExtraSense, we're using machine vision to monitor pests in food operations and cities and buildings. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natalie Rubio, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Deco Labs, and I also lead the Cellular Agriculture Commercialization Laboratory at Tufts University, where we spin out technologies from Tufts to enable cell ag at scale. And specifically, what we do is work on cultivated meat production, how to make it cost-effective and something that can actually start making an impact in the world.
Hello, everyone. Dilek Uzunalioğlu here. I am a food scientist. Yes, there are food scientists out there. So I spent 20 plus years in the industry working in global organizations as well as startups. Currently, I'm the founder and the principal consultant of Agora Food Solutions. And what I do is that I do help companies to develop and commercialize ingredients, food ingredients, as well as food products. And also I also do a lot of trainings to companies on new technologies, new ingredients, etc., to help them successfully bring products to the market, food products to the market.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Roberts. I'm a supply chain sustainability consultant, and specifically in the food system. So what that has meant for me is doing anything from researching, helping suppliers improve their climate resilience portfolio, improving sourcing decisions that are based on their sustainability goals, and connecting those to outcomes.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. I love to start at the beginning, and I would love to just start with each of your sort of origin story or aha moment. What put you on the path to where you are today with food? Where did this all start for you? Nikki, do you want to start, and then we'll just go down the line?
Sure. Yeah, I've always really admired efforts in the food system, specifically those that are related to sustainability. As you may know, the food system is one of the primary drivers of greenhouse gas emissions. and deforestation, but it's also essential. We need it, unlike other products that are out there in the market. So I think that it started from kind of, for me, that kind of mission statement of improving the food system in a way that's cost effective, that makes food available for everybody, is also desirable, and is good for the environment. So I don't know if there's one particular aha moment, but for me, I think it was kind of a slow evolution from starting in research, researching kind of what is possible. And my master's was in food system sustainability. And I worked with the fishing community in Indonesia, and we were kind of connecting the food security goals of this community and efforts to improve it to outcomes, and then kind of evolving from there into more consulting and implementation-based approaches. So yeah, I think it was more so a slow progression to realizing my place in the food system.
I mean, for me, not that flashy, but I think I wanted to be an engineer to begin with, going back. And when I started the engineering faculty, I realized that I could specialize in food processing. And it was a really aha moment, I guess, right? Like that's awesome, because it combines a lot of science degrees. Like, you need to understand chemistry, but food chemistry. You need to understand food microbiology, but food microbiology. Then you need to develop food processes to create foods that are safe, that are delicious, that are nutritionally rich, etc. So putting all this together, like no-brainer, right? I did finish my degree in food engineering, and then I start working for a food ingredient company. Really then understanding like really how these ingredients comes together to create foods, like all the way from their functionalities, how they impact the taste, how they impact the texture. It's fascinating, right? Like now it's harder, right? When you look at the food, I see all the different dimensions. It's aha moment, and every day it's an aha moment. And it's a very complicated system. Food is a very complicated system, and understanding it, how that system works, is fascinating. And I think we're going to talk about it through today, right? Thank you.
Is anyone not familiar with what cultivated meat is, by chance? Everyone's heard of it? Okay, great. That's awesome. Well, it's a pretty polarizing topic. People either, when you first hear about it, are like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, and they become pretty obsessed with it, or they think it's weird and gross and they don't really care. I was definitely in the former camp, obviously. I read an essay about it in college, and I happened to be studying chemical and biological engineering. And I also was a vegetarian, really cared about animals. And as soon as I heard the concept, I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This was in 2014, so quite a while ago. And I kind of always thought it would be a really nascent niche industry. I thought I'd be working in a research lab, and then maybe in 100 years it would become a reality. The industry has grown so much more than I ever thought it was. So I remain just really optimistic about the potential of the technology. I moved to Boston to do my PhD in cultivated meat at Tufts University, and I've also worked for and advised a number of startups in the space that all kind of have the scope of replacing animals in the food system with biotechnology. After I graduated, Tufts hired me to form a new team within the university to start building off of the technologies that they were developing. So Tufts is one of, if not the leading institution in the whole world for cultivated meat education, research, and innovation. And they were starting to build up this really great IP portfolio of super promising technologies. And because the knowledge and the skill set is still so niche, it was really hard to drive those technologies into the market because you needed pretty informed founders and investors. So that's what I started doing in 2023. And then as part of that initiative, we spun out Deco Labs as our first company to take the best, most promising innovation from Tufts that can really help scale cultivated meat. So what we do is produce cell culture media ingredients. So these are the ingredients that cells consume as they grow, and we're looking for new methods to make them basically 1,000 times cheaper so that those cost savings can translate into the end product and people will actually be able to buy cultivated meat, because the biggest challenge right now is that it's too expensive.
For me, my story is a little bit of looking back and connecting the dots. So I'm originally from Mexico, and I attended an American school in Mexico that was partially funded by APHIS. And you're like, why would APHIS fund a school in Mexico? You might ask. Well, that's because there's a thing called the screwworm fly. And it's a parasitic insect that larva lays eggs in open wounds in cattle, and the thing kind of buries itself in cattle and kills them. And they're pretty dangerous because they can decimate whole cattle populations very quickly. And so the United States government and Mexico formed an alliance to stop them at the southern Mexican border. And so you're like, that was my childhood. Every summer we would go and visit the plant as a field trip. So imagine what a field trip for a first grader or second grader looks like, going to a plant that's producing flies for a living. I didn't think any of it, back then, obviously went through a high school, college, didn't think anything of it. My prior startup was a co-working space in Cambridge. And through that co-working space, I was asked to go back to Mexico to talk about innovation. And one of the areas that we visited, the biggest industry was ag. And talking to some of the biggest growers in Mexico, they told me, we have this weevil in our peppers that if we get them in one of the peppers, we have to throw the whole production to the sea. We'd rather throw it to the sea than lose the certification from the USDA. I was like, that's insane. It's like, yeah, we lose billions of dollars every year. We just throw peppers, tomatoes, whatever it's infested, we'll throw it to the sea. When I got back, I got a chance to go to Florida, and I talked to growers in Florida, and they had the same issue. They're like, there's some pests that we can't monitor, effectively, so we end up just throwing a bunch of stuff to away. And the more I looked into it, I realized there's a stat. I don't know if you guys know this, but 40% of the food we grow is lost to pests and disease. 40%, and it got me thinking. I remember vividly, I was sitting in a co-working space, and I think Indigo Ag, which I'm sure you guys know, had just raised like a humongous round. And reading in the press release was, we'll increase yield by 2%. And I was like, that's insane. They're raising so much money and increasing yield by 2%, which is an incredible amount. But here we have problems that have been around for centuries that lose 40% of our production. And I think for me, that was the kind of the moment, the aha moment, like, oh, maybe that's what I was meant to do, right? Maybe that experience I had when I was a kid was meant for me to take this on now. And so I sold my co-working space, and I started ExtraSense.
Amazing. So we're here at Startup Boston Week. Natalie, you had a really interesting piece there about coming to Boston. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that, and I'd love to hear from all of you why Boston, what's special about this place. I don't think Boston is always at the top of the conversation about food, maybe the Midwest or California or New York City. So I think we have a really special ecosystem, and I'd love to hear just your experiences. Go.
Yeah, great question. So when I started my PhD in 2016, Boston and Tufts University was the only place on earth I could have gone, actually, because there's, again, 10 years ago, there was zero funding for cultivated meat research. Obviously, in an academic lab, you need to have a grant. This was completely new technology, so no grants existed. I had previously worked for a nonprofit called New Harvest. That was a very grassroots nonprofit that was just trying to kind of scrape together individual donor dollars to advocate for this technology. They eventually got enough, again, just like individual donations from people who thought this technology was cool, that they were able to fund doctoral research. So my PhD was funded through this nonprofit fellowship by New Harvest, and they had identified Dr. David Kaplan, a PI at Tufts University, as a PI who would be supportive of this research and had the right background. He has a lab in tissue engineering for a bunch of other, regenerative medicine applications. So it really was, Boston was truly the only place I could have gone to do this. And now, another 10 years later, it's really like one of the global hubs for this type of research because because there was a PI here who was willing to really take a risk and support an entirely new space. And I think Boston is really the perfect place in my industry for bench scale innovations, enabling technologies to be developed, up through maybe like the pilot scale phase. We have that infrastructure, we have the talent, the funding, the resources. I think the gap that I'm working to maybe address regionally right now is inform life science investors how this opportunity, totally translates to some of their skill sets and what they want to support. There's a lot of overlap between biotech, life science, and cellular agriculture.
Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I mean,
Why
I-
Boston?
maybe I can add a couple of things to it. I have been working, starting 2010, I have been working quite a bit with alternative proteins, and specifically plant proteins. And during that time, around 2010s, 11s, I had a lot of opportunity to look into different type of protein alternatives, technologies, etc. And I honestly did my PhD at Rutgers in food science. I end up working for a company in New Jersey after finishing my PhD, working on plant proteins, and then trying to figure out other different proteins that are there that we could utilize in the food system. Then an opportunity came from a startup at Boston. I'm like, Boston, food startup? Let's see. And that was the best thing happened. So I moved to Boston 5 years ago, and I did work for a startup where we look into the precision fermentation-based proteins and also other ingredients that enable improve the texture, flavor, taste in plant-based food. So I did that. In terms of the community here, I see a lot of community which is very supportive each other in terms of startup community. I think there is still needs to be done. I love to see, also big companies, big corporation looking into Boston too and see how they can innovate using the talent here. I wish to see more of that, right? Especially, I think especially in the space, alt protein space, we really need the big companies turning their resources and their thinking here to Boston area. I think there is so much good talent here that can be utilized.
I'll second that point on the good talent pool. I started out in fisheries, so that was my initial kind of foray into food systems, and for obvious reasons, Boston is a very strategic hub for fisheries. We have in Massachusetts, we have the largest fishing port in the U.S. And it's also a very strategic location to ship from. You could go north in northern New England. You could go to New York really easily. So there's a lot of reasons for being here for fisheries. And I worked on a project that was interviewing fishery suppliers, to help them improve their portfolio, make it more climate resilient. We're dealing with a lot of climate issues in the coastal waters in New England. Some of the most rapid changes happening in the northern hemisphere. But when I switched more so into regenerative agriculture, that's where I had to figure out what is the perfect hub for that. I don't think there is one, but I do think that the combination of the agricultural land in New England actually being very, very strong and having small producers all throughout New England, by the nature of this landscape, we tend to have smaller producers that are more agile, that are really seek personal connection, that have a lot of potential to take on these practices, but also the academic talent that we all know is really, really strong here. I think it makes for a budding agricultural and food hub.
Again, my 5 cents. I have, I definitely second the talent pool point. I remember being in a startup event, one of these roundtables, and everybody around me had PhDs. I was like, this only happens in Boston. I would say the least educated with a master's degree in there. But I would put an alternate point that, at least for us, finding large manufacturing and growing operations in the Northeast is tough. What we do find is people willing to try new technology and talent that are hard to find anywhere else. So, if I were to do this, again, with another ag startup, definitely start here. But then if you're thinking about food operations, production, the Midwest, the Southeast, all these other hubs of production seem like a great way to start. But capital, talent, the community, you're all going to find it here in a very close geographic radius, which is hard to find anywhere else.
Fantastic. Thank you all for all of those great perspectives. So we sort of have an understanding of why Boston's so great, what you've been doing here. I'm curious, here we are in September 2025, talked about the industry a little bit, but what do you see are some of the larger unaddressed needs, or, wow, I really wish more people were focusing on this thing, or we need more of? I think some of you touched a little bit on that, but I'd love to hear a little deeper dive. Maybe just start with Nikki and go down the line.
I think innovative financing mechanisms, really critical when it comes to especially startups. You often start from a point of disadvantage compared to some of the larger companies. So for instance, when it comes to what I can speak from is kind of the context of food production, the kind of more production end. You have, farmers that are hoping to try regenerative agriculture practices, but it's a longer investment return. So it's often something that traditional lending will not find favorable, and they will not fund it. But if you have something like blended finance, where you take patient capital, the initial kind of catalytic investment, and you use that to kind of attract the larger investors, or you work with a lot of banks will have favorable loans now for more sustainable practices. So they'll have like a longer term payback, they'll have insurance schemes. So there's a kind of variety of ways that you could go about it. But I think it's really critical that we have those finance partnerships in order to build the business case and fund something that's has really, really good environmental returns and eventually economic returns, but may not give that kind of traditional short, all about yield type of timescale.
Yeah, that's so true. I think I want to take us a little bit back to our title, right? Like Foodtech. I think there is a Foodtech somewhere in our title, session title. So Foodtech has been there, right? Foodtech has been there since 1800s. People were doing canning, pasteurization, heat treatments to make sure that as towns are developing, produce food for the people, mass quantities. So. And then around 1900s, then it became mid-1900s, then people start looking in supplying those products to larger, more shipped to big distances, right? Then the other technologies developed, right? Food technologies, extrusion, spray drying to make the products more stable, freezing technologies, refrigeration technologies, etc. So now, if we are talking about today, like 21st century, there are so many things still needs to be resolved. And I think that the areas that I'm going to speak about the areas, right? One is that definitely around like use of the resources more effectively and more efficiently. We do have an understanding of the plants, but not necessarily we are utilizing them, using them very effectively, right? Let's understand proteins coming from plant sources, right? That's one area that we could explore even further. How can we make plants and how we can use them more efficiently through using different food tech or technologies. So that's one area. And then I think another area is that there are other ways to make proteins as well. And can we expand on those, like precision fermentation, using microbes to make proteins, right? We use microbes to make food products for a long time. So can we use it in a different way? We use microbes to make enzymes, but we can use them to make proteins as well. The other thing that I will say, cellular agriculture, as you mentioned, it's another way to make proteins because we need to look into those new technologies. And then final thing that I was going to mention is the AI, right? So and I will mention it, it's important. And a lot of what we see in the food tech, people are literally looking into the back end. What I mean is that, understanding consumer behaviors. Why how people pick one food or not the other, right? So there is a lot of work can be done in that space, and also in the product development phase, right? There are so many options and ingredients. Can we streamline that using AI to help us with the product development? There is a lot of work going in there. But then let's move in, right? And then there is a lot of AI can be done in the processing of food as well. I do have one story that I will tell. One time we have a customer complaining an ingredient they have been taking like last 10 years, right? And all of a sudden it's not performing well anymore. And then we had to go back and dig all the data, understand that 4 years ago, we changed the raw material that we used in the production of this ingredient. Because the systems were not aligned, we had to dig all these papers and data, right? Now it's so easy to do it that way. So increasing the efficiency, process efficiency, seeing the mistakes right away and correcting them. That's definitely an area. And of course, in the research too, there are so many molecules, how can we use AI, etc. But one last thing, if you let me say, is understanding consumer preferences. We have a lot of techniques that we use, right, to understand the consumers. Consumers a lot of sensory techniques that we use. But I think it's just a little bit, food is a little bit emotional too, right? We know that people get food to get the job done. And some part of the job is about functionality, right? Functionality, I mean, okay, I want certain type of protein, I want clean label, I want fibers, etc. That's the function. And I want it to be convenient, and I want it to be clean label. But also food touches the brain, right? When you crunch to something, you remember a memory. Or when you get the flavor of something, you remember your mom. So emotions are important too. So food touches the brain. And I think there is a lot of research that needs to be done to understand that emotion part of food as well, and food acceptance. So there are some companies working on that, and I would like to see more of that.
Yeah, definitely agree with everything you said. I'll speak for two gaps specifically for cultivated meat. So one of the reasons I'm so optimistic about the technology, even though I guess from an external perspective it kind of seems like it's plateaued, is because from my perspective, the biggest challenges that we have to reaching cost and scale are totally addressable with today's AI technology, specifically finding the right formulation of ingredients to feed your cells so that you're using those resources effectively and efficiently, and then also scaling the process up. And now we can do that with digital twin technology instead of running so many experiments that are really costly. So I think we'll really start to see an uptick in progress for cultivated meat companies and precision fermentation companies once AI is, we generate the right data sets and start applying that. And then a gap that, if filled, would really catalyze my company specifically, as well as the other startups that are kind of in our ecosystem, would be shared infrastructure that's specialized for our needs. So I think Boston kind of pioneered the life science incubator model, which is really great, and that's what we're operating out of right now, a life science incubator space. But the equipment there is specialized for biotech, not for food tech. And so all that equipment, we have to buy for ourselves. If there was an incubator space that had cell ag equipment and was also maybe a little greater scale to allow like pre-pilot scale-up iteration, that will be really critical, and it's something that Tufts is working to establish in Medford. And then I think even, like a pilot scale facility that multiple companies could access would be really instrumental, and is something that's being developed in Europe and some other places around the world.
So I think I agree with you guys on the consumer side that people want to know what's in your food, and they want to find alternatives. I would add that people also want to know how the food is produced, where it's stored, where it's coming from, is it safe, right? So understanding food safety, traceability, making sure there's no contaminants in your food. I mean, I always throw a stat that I don't know if you guys want to hear this, but the FDA it has minimum thresholds for insect or rodent parts in food. I don't know if you guys know that, but so it's they just assume it's going to happen, and so you can have I think, a part of a rodent per loaf of bread or per, so just think about that. That's,
Accidentally.
yeah, yeah.
That's alternative
It's
protein.
exactly. That's all.
That's
That's
how they
alternative
say-
protein.
That's how it says.
Yeah.
I mean,
So you can't, with all the viruses and diseases that are spread with through pest, we can't have this, margin of error anymore. And so I wish more people took that seriously. When we talk to producers, the very best producers definitely take it seriously, but I will tell you, not everybody takes it that seriously, which is why the threshold exists. And the other thing I would mention is, the food tech doesn't exist in silos. There has to be collaboration between government, companies, labs, right? This kind of ecosystem Boston's built, it just needs to be bigger for that food tech ecosystem to flourish, right? You mentioned bringing big companies. Like, there has to be larger companies that are in the space, in the food tech space. Otherwise, a lot of these companies or startups just turn into research projects, or they can't scale as fast as they should, and then there's no investment. So that's what my point would be.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I'd like to ask each of you, if you weren't working on what you're currently working on, where would you be in the food industry? Or maybe asked a different way, what do you think is the most exciting area besides your thing? Okay, so don't talk your book here, please. Can we start with you?
Oh gosh. Well, I think I realized later in my job, as I start working with the chefs, I think I could have been a chef, right? Like, but I think I'm happy how it worked out, right? But love working with the chefs. A lot of innovation comes with working with the chefs. So, and what was the other part of the question?
No, that was it. Just
Yeah,
asked it two ways.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's
what's the most
amazing,
exciting
right?
part?
Like how they think
Yeah.
and how they innovate, how they bring different flavors together, how they bring different textures together, and through collaboration with them, really create really good ingredients, food products, etc. And I wish I was a chef, I guess, if I come back again. Maybe I was one before. I'm not sure.
I'll build on that a little bit because I think I would work on more of the end of the supply chain. So thinking about chefs, thinking about farm to school programs. I think those are all really, really important levers to build demand, to build change. When it comes to chefs, they're all about the highest quality ingredients, and they really, really care about the story of where their food comes from. And I've always cared about the story and about the communication side of things because I think that it doesn't just attract consumers, but it helps the entire supply chain from end to end to have that traceability to really make public commitments about what you're going to do and follow up on those commitments. And when it comes to things like institutional sourcing, farm to school, for instance, they have so much buying power. And they also have the benefit, not as much of a benefit right now, but the benefit of government funding, where they can use those sources that don't really they have a different kind of system of demand than like a private company, for instance, where they can kind of be the first movers in that system and really provide farmers with a strong, reliable demand source.
Yeah, I think chef is the right answer because that would be so fun. But I think, I guess my two things that came to mind, I think like addressing food waste would just be so impactful. I have no idea how to even start that. And then my like pipe dream, if I had like a lot of money, I'd love to start a grant program for where I live. I live in Malden. I'd love to start a grant program that gives grants to companies that already exist there, restaurants that already exist there, if they transition more of their menu to being plant-based. To kind of keep local companies there, kind of fight gentrification, but also kind of have more plant-based food options.
I'm gonna go a little out there because during my day-to-day, I get to see a lot of images of rats and disgusting insects. So I don't want to stay in that space. I play tennis, and while working with ExtraSense, I realized that there's a lot of data sets, the machine vision data sets that are creating, generating data that I think would change the way we live. And one of the ways I thought could change was how we learn new sports. And I had the idea because I play tennis with a bunch of guys. We're always filming each other, like hitting a serve or forehand or watching YouTube videos. And I thought, can biomechanic analysis be done using machine vision and help us learn new sports by yourselves? So that's a side project I have actually, and I'm looking into it.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm sorry, it's the middle of the afternoon. If you feel comfortable sharing, are there any mistakes from your career that you're comfortable sharing about and helping the audience, avoid mistakes in the future, learn from them, benefit? You don't feel like you have to share. I'm gonna sort of throw this up as the jump ball. So if someone is comfortable, if you all want to pass, that's totally fine too.
I'll start if you want. So, there's so many mistakes to share, but there's one I think that's relevant for people with startups because, I don't think it's very particular, but I think maybe some of you will find this. So when we started ExtraSense, we actually had a very big client, pretty much like 6 months out of the gate, a big pest control company that starts with a T. And they paid us big amount of money, and they said, you got to work for us for the next 2-3 years, and we'll probably buy your company out. And we're like, great, we don't have to do anything else. Long story short, that was a big mistake for us because things didn't work out the way we wanted them. They actually ended up getting bought out by another company. We couldn't offer or test our product with anybody else because of the non-competes and NDAs. And it made me think that had I not done that, our company would have progressed much faster early on. So if, everybody tells you, of course, hindsight's 2020, of course we could have done better. But if you ever have a chance, especially when you're early on and you're a company, you're a startup, and you have tech that you haven't tested or you're still testing, I would urge you to get as many customers to give you feedback and test it early on and not marry yourself to one customer, even if the one customer looks like a very nice, big, juicy client.
Yeah, I feel like I'm actively making mistakes that I'll look back on and be like, oh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
It's hard to know now because we haven't reached like kind of the end goal. And I think, things have felt not right in the moment, but it's led me to kind of right now creating, my dream company with the best people that I really love working with. I do think kind of a pattern maybe that I see in myself, which sets me up to be a good entrepreneur, but sometimes it's kind of tricky if I don't have enough balance, is to just be like a little impulsive with going for things. Like I'll just say yes without thinking something through all the way just to drive things forward. And it does drive things forward. But in hindsight, sometimes it leads to issues or communication problems on the back end. So I think the most common thing I think to myself is like, before saying yes or just like signing that thing, I should have maybe spent like a week looking at it, getting advice, and really thinking about the structure and the potential consequences if things manifest in certain ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, right? I was just thinking as you said it, right? And there's also a gut feeling also, like, oh, I should have looked, I see what happened. I mean, so many mistakes I think I did, right, over the years for me as well. But I will, one of the biggest mistakes was I should have left the corporate way before.
That's true.
That's one. So I'm very honest because I think it could have been much better. Second one of my mentors, when I was working for a large organization, told me that, Dilek, what I suggest to you, I always worked in the R&D, research, development, etc. And he told me, get a sales job or do a business development job. Even if you cannot do it, just observe those people. And I wish I did a better job on that because as I'm working to build my thing, like I'm realizing that, yes, I'm an expert, right? People know me as an expert, but now I need to tell people what I do. And it is the toughest job. I wish that I had that talent, right, which I don't have now. And in terms of my startup experience, the third one I would like to add, I think you asked one mistake, but I really need to tell this, like when you really, there are going to be situations, right? Something working on the bench, and then you have a design. Make sure that it is scalable, not in-house. Like don't ever scale up in-house, even if the first design is not something available out there. Please try to manage to design your process such a way that you could do it in an external manufacturing facility, because that's going to save you a lot of time and money. Don't make the mistake of, I'm going to open a market development unit, I'm going to do it in-house, I'm not going to spend time to redesign the process. Please redesign the process. It's very important.
This is more of a message for all of the students in the room. I made the mistake pretty early on in college of thinking that I had to have everything figured out. I had to know my major, and I had to follow through with that major, and that major was going to lead me to this degree, and then I was going to get this job, not knowing, where my skill sets even were or where my interests even were. And so I think when you're going through the process of schooling, the best thing you can do, unless you really know, and unless you're going into some concrete profession that really requires step-by-step path, just experiment, take different courses, do research summers, work in different capacities with different people, and start to just follow the thread of your interests. I'm almost 30 now, and I feel like I'm just starting a career path that I'm excited about. But throughout that entire time, I have been, I realized that it's been leading up to this, that I needed to build X and Y skill sets to get to the point where now I think that my passion, my skill sets, and my interests all align. And that really to me is all about experimenting, meeting new people. Cold interviewing has been such a good resource for me. It's hard to do, but literally just reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn and saying like, hey, I really like what you do. Like, could you take 20 or 30 minutes of your time? And I can tell you that 9 times out of 10, the person is actually really excited to talk to you because they love what they do and they're really flattered that you reached out to them in the first place. So I'd say don't be afraid to do those types of things to really get to know what you want to do.
That's a great piece of advice for the students too. You can always play the student card, like, hey, I'm a student, would love to talk to you. People like to talk about themselves. It's very easy to get them to go on. So that's always something you can play. So 2 quick questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So start thinking about some questions you might have for these wonderful folks. These are going to be quick. So I want like 1 or 2 sentences each answer. We're just going to go down the line with each one. Number 1, what is the most common or a very common misconception you hear from people outside the industry about the food industry? Go.
Oof, jeez. Well, in my case, that it's all clean, I guess.
Good job. Good thing we had lunch before this.
Yeah, don't think about it.
Yeah, for again, cultivated meat specifically, people think that the Impossible Burger is cultivated meat.
I mean, people don't understand ultra-processed foods and what it means.
That regenerative agriculture doesn't make business sense.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And our last question, this is really serious, so I want you all to really think about this. What is your favorite food or ingredient? And jump in if you have it ready to go.
Jelly beans.
Love it. Any particular flavor?
Buttered popcorn, obviously.
Obviously.
I mean, ingredients-wise, it's hard to pick favorites, right? All of them does their job and unbelievable, like if you put them together. Food-wise,
Yeah.
Food, is it to be food or candy? Is
Dealer's choice. Candy is fine.
So jelly bean is great, but I want to go a little bit softer on the gummy bear side,
Great.
which is chewy, but I want to coat it with the chocolate, which is also melts as well. So I think it will be a good combination. Chocolate covered gummy bears and dark chocolate.
Okay, mine has nothing to do with the taste or desirability, but wheat. It's the foundation of our society, and you can turn into so many different things. It's got huge climate potential, huge risks, that sort of thing. So,
What are we talking? Durum, hard red? What kind of?
I mean,
Thank you.
if we're gonna get that specific, then semolina.
Okay, fair.
I'll go with something dear and close to my heart: avocado and everything. Just so good.
That sounds amazing and very delicious, and I kind of want to eat it right now. So let's give it up for the amazing panel. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And now I want to turn it over to our amazing audience. Thank you so much for being here on a Friday afternoon. We're going to open it up for questions. I just have one ask. Let's have the first sentence be a question, and the second sentence is not one. All right, go.
Okay.
Is there a
Yeah, he's got it over there.
mic?
She has a question.
Oh.
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you for the session. I have a question. COVID, politics, all of these events have shown the importance of food sovereignty to nations. Where do you see ag tech could help that countries have basics of food sovereignty throughout different either political issues or another, God help us all, if another pandemic? Where do you ag tech see that helps us build that food sovereignty, or at least the basics of it? Thank you.
I'll take part of it because I think one of the reasons we got really passionate about food safety was the pandemic, and we saw that a disruption in the supply chain could easily empty our supermarkets. And I felt, at least I don't know how you guys felt, but during the height of the pandemic, we're a couple of weeks away from like total chaos there with the toilet paper and all that good stuff. And so I think traceability, understanding where our food comes from, where it's going through, if it's safe, it's, at least for me, at the core of being able to provide a safe supply chain for the population. So for me, the safety and the storage of the food is, I think, key component.
I was in Singapore last month, and they're one of the top leaders in cultivated meat, specifically for food insecurity reasons. During the pandemic, they're like, oh my gosh, we import all of our food. So they have a goal to produce 30% of their whole food supply, I think, by 2030. So the first cultivated meat product was accepted from the regulatory agency in Singapore specifically for that. And so I think because you can kind of create any meat you want through cell cultivation technology, it solves a lot of food insecurity issues for countries.
So I do volunteer in a couple of organizations, and one of them is Partners in Food Solutions. This is an organization that supports companies in Africa. And it doesn't need to be food tech. It's just for very simple projects, let's say utilizing banana fiber to create fibers or sugars, or using bananas to create sugars, or just simple rice milling. So the reason I'm giving you this example, I think there are a lot of opportunities out there to better utilize the sources. And I wish that there was more organization like them who helps out those people in different societies to help entrepreneurs there to develop products that can go directly to their society and systems, etc. I think that that's going to be important.
I think with food sovereignty, what mostly comes to mind for me is the traceability aspect. So having, I think that comes down to building relationships with your suppliers, but also having platforms that help you do MRV, which is monitoring, reporting, and validation or verification. Either way, it's a really, really important exercise for any company to do. But then I also think about diversification. So I think that kind of connects back to your point about one particular crop can be used in a variety of ways. And similarly, one landscape can hold many different crops. And the more you're able to kind of diversify your portfolio as a farmer, for instance, as a supplier, you're not only able to potentially make more money, but you're also able to kind of secure yourself against any sort of climate impacts, supply chain impacts, because you not only have one stream of income, you have, for instance, 10. And then I think with that, you can kind of establish a certain region as having these crops to offer that no other region has. Or so I think it kind of goes up from the supplier, the individual farmer level, all the way up to kind of a regional and national level. So for that, I think the traceability and the ability to diversify your portfolio is super important for resilience.
Wonderful. Next question.
Hi, I'm Anna. Thanks for the discussion. And Nikki, you talked a little bit about regenerative agriculture. And my question is that sometimes people see that regenerative agriculture and technology is two different things and they can't work together. And what do you think about it? Can they work together or just not?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it kind of depends somewhat on the scale that you're working on, the system that you're working in. But I think technology is a fantastic complement to regenerative agriculture. I mean, to understand, regenerative agriculture really is a set of practices that are all about improving soil health. And soil is a complex ecosystem. And we're still getting to know what kind of all the various factors are that go into soil health. And so there's a variety of technologies that can really help identify first, baselining, where is your soil at? Then, what improvements could we make, and tracking the progress of those improvements, and then what other interventions are possible. So I actually think that they're entirely complementary, and you could definitely do regenerative agriculture, I think, on a small scale without those technological complements. But I think once it gets to a larger scale, you really do, and especially at like a company-wide level, I think you really do need that.
Oh, okay, my turn. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the panel and the student advice. My question is how companies and startups can get more skeptical consumers excited about these new ways to grow food and get food on our tables. Things like taste or texture can come to play, and a lot of people are more worried about having protein created into a lab than other kind of stuff. So how would you address that kind of like more the advertisement side of it?
Yeah, I'll speak on the cultivated meat front. I think it's impossible to just talk about it and convince someone. I just think there's almost no consumer work that could be done other than learning about what they want. Besides, people need to taste the thing. And we can't make enough cultivated meat right now for low enough cost for people to just experience it. So I think that we just need people to taste it and be like, oh, this tastes amazing. Rather than just telling them why it's good or nutritious or better for the planet or whatever. They need to just actually have that experience. And people that have been lucky to do these tastings around the world or eat it in Australia or Singapore, they're just like, oh my gosh, cool, tastes like chicken. And done.
Mhm. Yeah, I think also, we talked about it a little bit, but it's also about get the job done. I always go back to that, right? There are so many different jobs that if you eat the food to get some jobs done, right? And sometimes those jobs, as you mentioned, oh, I want high protein, I want maybe fiber too, and then I want to be clean label, and I want that to be convenient. And top of it, there is also emotional part of it too. When you are making food choices, right, you need to keep that in mind as well. So if you put all this together, right, as you are developing a product, I think you need to touch at least two of those jobs. And then also test it, as you said, right? People need to try it. You need to create opportunities for people to try it, starting small. But I think it's very interesting, especially emotional piece we often missed, especially when it comes to the when you are creating alternative proteins. The emotional piece is always missing, and we kind of rethink about that now and educate people, understand the emotional piece a little bit. I will say really, really critical, because people understand the impacts of food in the climate, people are okay to change their cars to hybrid, but not their food, right? So that part is missing a little bit, so we need to further understand it.
Wonderful. I think we have time for one more question. Okay. Derek, you
Sorry, I have the mic. My name is Derek. I'm a food systems expert and agricultural and food consultant. My question is, my favorite part about food systems is sort of like the intersectionality between all the different, I don't know, other industries, say logistics, refrigeration, stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit to how that sort of intersectionality affects your work and how the Boston startup ecosystem can sort of help support that?
I think I can talk a little about that because we are not we're not producing new proteins, we're not producing new food technologies per se. We are the intersection of kind of food safety and public health in a way, right? And so for us, I'll give you a perfect example. Even though we started with monitoring passing food manufacturing, we just announced a week ago a pilot with the city of Boston through the Boston Housing Authority to monitor pests outside of public housing. So I think the Boston ecosystem, because of the I guess a culture of being willing and able to try new technologies, gives you that opportunity, gives you those opportunities. So for us, like I said, we ideally would want to work with Land O'Lakes or General Mills, which we did have pilot with. But there's also opportunities here for other things. And so I think when you work at the intersection, to your point, of food with other things, Boston is a great place to be because they are open to trying new technologies, even though they might not be exactly the industry that you're targeting per se.
Yeah, we were founded to create ingredients for cultivated meat, but investors really wanted us to diversify our markets, and because we create things that feed cells, we can also tune our ingredients to feed cells for pharma or create ingredients for cosmetics or really a number of industries. So it's really kind of now we're thinking out. It's hard because I only care about cultivated meat, but I'm trying to open my mind to care about other things.
Yeah, I think similarly, it's it really ends up being an ecosystem of people that are responsible for the entire supply chain. And so in my work, I help build agricultural sustainability projects. And so we work with suppliers, we work with farmers, we work with MRV partners, project implementation partners, and financing ultimately to try to get these projects off the ground. And the cool thing that I've realized is that everybody has a thread that kind of ties them together. And I think one of the most important pieces is that you just have to figure out what that thread is. What is the motivation for these different stakeholders in that ecosystem? And if you're able to do that, then I think you can really work with that to get everybody on the same page, get them aligned, and kind of start to unlock those solutions.
All right. So we can do one really quick question. We've got like 3 minutes left. I want to be respectful to our team here. Anybody? Yes.
Well, where do we start? So if you think about
the question was, what are some of the benefits of getting rid of all the pests?
if you think about where pests affect us both, from the growing side all the way to retail, right? So we lose food on the supermarket, on the warehouse, on the tractor trailer, on the processing plant, on the soil when it's grown. Not all of them are pests, some are just diseases, et cetera. But think about all that loss of food is factored into the price of your food, right? So if I buy a loaf of bread, that price builds in the fact that I lose 20% of the grain in my silo. Think about that, 20%. So that's been kind of built in. And that's kind of built in around the whole kind of supply chain is like loss, right? Loss not only for pests, but other humidity, whatever it may be, product loss. So imagine getting 40% of the price of the food back to you. That'd be amazing. That'd be insane. Reducing the price of 40% would be insane. Or producing 40% more food. It just, the impact it would have, a couple percentages improvement would be tremendous for the consumer and for the availability of food. So,
Wonderful. And can we get just one final thought from each of you as we wrap up this awesome panel and say thank you so much to everybody?
you want to start with it?
Nikki, start.
Sure, sure. I can't stress enough the importance of collaboration. So I think whatever project you're working in, find other people that are doing different things that's going to contribute to the same objective.
I think for me, I just want to highlight the importance of balanced nutrition. We always talk about high protein, high fiber, low sugar, but I think we often miss balanced nutrition is the most critical.
Foodtech in Boston is small but growing, and I'd really love to kind of build a really collaborative, close ecosystem. So if anyone is working in foodtech, building a foodtech startup, please reach out because I host community events, trivia nights, things to get foodtech people together.
For me, I will leave you with this thought that in my mind, food tech is not just about producing the food of the future, but is making sure it gets to us safe. So,
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. I think this was an awesome panel. I learned a ton. I hope you all did. Now we all know how we're going to feed the future. So let's give a hand up for our wonderful panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say, as a lifelong learner, you've opened up a whole new space I need to go out and find out about. You just made it sound just so interesting, and I think the ability to put passion towards something that is so impactful, it's just great. And for the few of you that said you had an aha moment and a passion, I just want to say how jealous I am, because I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm just kind of like, ooh, that looks really fascinating, and that looks really fascinating. So it's wonderful for you that you were able to find something that you could build a career on. I did get a sales job. 100% agree. If you can have the opportunity as either there's things called sales engineers, people who have the technical side of the sale, because I hated holding the quota, but being the technical side of the sales team got me the same experience without having to hold the quota. I got to travel all over the country and the world, and it was really fun. So for all you young people out there, it is a great way to get experience. It's really hard to find people that can bridge that gap between technical knowledge and communicating it to the different audiences that need to hear it. So I loved that. I love the shout outs for Boston. That was a great question. Thank you for that, because I live in Rhode Island right now, but I lived in Boston for a little while and have worked with a number of startups from here. I just love Boston, so that was really cool. What else? Oh, and I'll just close with so many mistakes to share. That was, yeah, that really resonated with me, because I think that is part of entrepreneurship, is making those mistakes, failing fast. And so those are some of my takeaways. Again, a huge thanks to our speakers. We have a lot more in store both today and the rest of the week. There's also a closing party and the startup showcase happening tonight here at 6:30. We know you'll want to mingle after the event. We always get lines behind each of the speakers, but we do have to prep for the next session that's coming in here. So don't make me get out my mom voice. And with that, I will thank everyone here. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, team. Really a great discussion. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.